This is Gemara Menachos, Daf Yud Ches, and we're holding in the very bottom of Yud Zayinim and Beis. We are 3 lines from the bottom as the Gemara just answered up for Rav Asi's Diuk. And says the Gemara, Eloi, we started the Teretz, the Kuli Alma Karis Lek, everyone agrees there's no Karis. And again, this was within the context of Achila, two different types of consumption, Achilas Adam and Achilas Mizbeach. So says the Gemara, what exactly is going on in this brisa? Explains the Gemara, V'hacha Gimel Machlekes V'davar. There is a three-way Machlekes with regarding the Machshava to leave over the dam until the next day. What is this three-way Machlekes? Says the Gemara. Tanakama Savar Tanakama holds Banach Pligi. Tanakama holds that in this case, in the case that was spoken about, this is precisely where Rav Eliezer and the Chachamim disagree. That what? Lehanoch Devrei Kol Kasher. But they argue in this case specifically, in a case in which one has a machshava to eat something which is supposed to be done aktara with it, to consume it on the mizbeach, to do aktara with something that's supposed to be eaten. But lahanoch devrei kol kasher. But the next case, if someone has in mind to leave over till the next day, everyone agrees it's going to be kosher. For Rav Yehuda, as we turn over to Yechesam and Aleph Savar, B'hanach Pligi, Rav Yehuda holds that they argue about that case as well, when similar to the first machlekes we just spoke about, which was what? Someone has a machshava to burn something that's supposed to be eaten, eat something that's supposed to be burnt. But lahanoch is the re'akol basel, the exact opposite, according to Shita number 1, according to Tanakama. That's where they argue. And by lahanoch, the re'akol kash, according to Rav Yehuda, they argue about the same case. But lahanoch, the re'akol basel. My time. What's the reason Rav Yehuda learns that lahanoch the re'akol basel? Says the Gemara, the reason is it's a gzeira. Gzeira mixas damai atu kol damai. We have a gzeira in this case of mixas dam atu because of the concern that what? You might have a machshava to leave over all the blood. V'chol damai, and in such a case, it would be psula daraisa. How do I know that? The Tanya, Merlehem Rav Yehuda says, Rav Yehuda, do you not agree with me? You've left it over for the next day. It is possible. Of course you do. If so, then even if the shchita just had kavana to leave it over to the next day, it's going to be possible. If you actually do it, Zok Rav Yehuda, then kavana for that is going to be the same. Says Rav Eliezer, Rav Eliezer Paisel. Even in this says the machlokes, Rav Eliezer Paisel, v'chachamim machshirim, and that's going to be Rav Elazar arguing Rav Yehuda. So we have the Tanakama machlokes lahanach dever kol kasher. Rav Yehuda machlokes lahanach dever kol pasol. Now we have Rav Elazar that even in this last case, it's going to be a machlokes. End of way that we're explaining the brisa. But we quoted a brisa a moment ago. Excuse me, end of way of explaining the three-way machlokes. But we quoted a brisa portraying Shitas Rabbi Yehuda. Says the Gemara, is that true? Is that accurate? V'hatanya, but we learned in a brisa. Amar Rabbi kishalachti lemitzvahs midaisi. Says Rabbi, when I went to literally lematzois midoisai, to drain my measures, eat of Lozben Shamua, I went to ask all the kashas that I had after Rav Lozben Shamua. Va'amri la lemazaz mitzvahs of Lozben Shamua. Some say afoch is that he went to answer up the kasha Lozben Shamua. But either way, what happened next was Matzasi says Rabbi, I found Yosef Abavli Yosef Lefanov. Yosef of Bavli is sitting by a chaviv loy be Yosef. About that which Rav Yosef of Bavli is saying is extremely chaviv ad la'achas to the ultimate degree. So Amr loy, Yosef said to Rav Elazar ben Shamua, Rabbi Hashoichet as azavel aniach midam lamacher mahu. If you shech the carbon to leave it down for the next day, what's the halacha? Amr loy kosher. Arvis. What if you shech it? Excuse me. Amr loy kosher. Arvis later in the day. Amar loy kosher. So Rav Elazar ben Shamua said kosher, and then Yosef himself said kosher. But Shachris the next morning, Amr loy kosher. He repeated halacha nachamol. Tzarayim Amr loy kosher. But mincha the next day, still Amr loy kosher. So he kept on holding to his guns. Ella says the Gemara, kosher Rav Elazar boisel. But now in mincha he adds on that Rav Eliezer is going to say it's possible. Savu panav shal Yosef Bavli, the face of Yosef Bavli was sahav, it was golden, it lit up. Amar Lai, Elazar Shamua said to him, Yosef kimaduma ani, it seems to me shloiki vanenu shma seinu adata. It's from the fact that right now you're getting extremely excited. It sounds like until this moment everything wasn't beseder, and only right now you felt it was. Amar Lai, Yosef responds, Rabbi Hein, indeed. El Ravuda Baisal, Shana Li. I just remember that Ravuda told me it's possible. V'chazarti al kol talmidav. The Rebbe said it was possible. I went to all the Talmidim ubikashti Lai, and I asked of them, Chaver, v'loi matzasi. And I asked someone to remind me of the teaching of the Rebbe, but no one was able to. And therefore I thought maybe I was just misremembering. But achshav, but now sheshani sali basol. Now that you, Rav Elazar said it's basol, echzarti li avidasi, that which I forgot returned to me. Zalgu ein of the Moish Rav Elazar ben Shamua. So Rav Elazar ben Shamua's eyes filled with tears. Omar, he said, Ashreich and Tamidei Chachamim, Shedivrei Torah Chavivin Aleichem B'Yoser. Famous song comes up over here that Rav ben Shamua is so emotionally moved when Yosef Abavli finally remembered the halacha, the glow on his face. Kara Lav HaMikra, Rav ben Shamua said, Ma ahavti al mikra hazeh, ma ahavti teirasecha, kol hayoy misi chasi v'goymer. Says the Gemara of Nesha v'Yehuda v'Nesha Rav Elai Talmid Rav Eliezer, lefikach shanalcha mishnas Rav Eliezer. Now Rav Elazar ben Shamua continued that since Rav Yehuda is son of Rav Elai son of Rav Eliezer, lefikach shanalcha Rav Yehuda taught you Mishnas Rav Eliezer. So you're remembering that the halacha I'm saying is like you heard from your Rebbe Yehuda really was Shitas Rebbe Eliezer. But now, after the beautiful story, says the Gemara, 1 second. If you're going to tell me like Yehuda said that when you want to leave over the dam, everyone agrees it's basol. What does it mean? You reminded him of something. Whereas if Yehuda said that according to everyone it's going to be puzzle, so they're not in sync. Says Gemara, "Lemay kosher." Pleasure paisel is nai. Yehuda taught Yosef, is it kosher? But Rav says it's puzzle. Iachi my high, my iachi my ha mibnei. The whole introduction is wrong because he's not saying a differing opinion; he's agreeing. Says Asnaye, that's what he learned. So what do you mean? You know what it means? It doesn't necessarily mean the actual halacha, but it means the concept that someone agrees that it's going to be possible, similar to his own opinion. And with that, we move on to the new Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Lo Yatzak, Lo Balal, Lo Pasach, Lo Malach, Lo Hinish, Lo Higif. Different parts of the Karban Mincha that were not done. Lo Yatzak, he didn't pour in the oil. Lo Balal, he didn't mix the oil into the flour. Lo Pasas, he didn't break it into pieces. Lo Malach, he didn't salt it properly. Lo Hinif, he didn't wave it. Lo Higif, he didn't bring it near the Mizbeach. Pasas on Batim, Merubais, broken into many pieces. But Lo Mashchan, he didn't smear it with oil. Kashira, if any of these entities happen to your Karban Mincha, it is kosher. Says the Gemara, my Lo Yatzak. What does it mean that he did not pour in the oil? He didn't put in any oil. Ikuva, then it's going to hold back the Karban. Ksiva, so the Karban's going to be apostle. Why would the Mishnah say it's kosher? Ella Lo Yatzak Bahen Kayin. You know what it means? He didn't pour in the oil. It means the Kayin didn't pour in the oil. Elazar non-Kayin. And that case is kosher. If that's true, nami. When the Mishnah says he didn't mix in the oil, kayin, it must mean the kayin didn't mix in the oil. Elazar, klal, psula. But the diak would be in similar vein. If it wasn't mixed at all, then what? It would be possible. What's the problem? As we turn over to Yechas Mebei, says the Gemara Vatanan, but we learned in a Mishnah, Shishim Nivlalim. Shishim ve'echadei nevlalim. 60 sarin can be mixed with oil. 61 cannot. Avina ban, we pondered. Ki'ena nevlalim, I have it. If it can be mixed, who cares? Vatanan. Loiba halal kosher, our Mishnah. Ve'amer Rav Zira explaining our Mishnah. Kol harai lebila. Here it is, the famous rule. How many times we've had this rule in a borrowed sense, not about actual mixing, but about the colloquial mixing about other karbanos. But here it means mixing. So says the Gemara, we see clearly that even if it's not mixed, it's going to be fine. Explains the Gemara, Midi Airi Akadisa Bakadisa. Lo Yatzak, the first case of the Mishnah wasn't, the oil wasn't poured. Lo Yatzak Kayin Elazar. Lo Balal means Lo Balal Klal. We go to the next case of the Mishnah. Shabasa beat the Merubas Kshira. It was broken into many pieces. Kasher Ashla Balal Klal Kasher. Pitin Merubas Mibai. If it was broken into, if it wasn't broken down at all, it's kasher. It's broken into many pieces. Mibai. You have to teach us this din. Says the Gemara, Bai Pitim Merubais. What does that mean? Sheriba pit petitim. It means he increased the number of pieces more than he needed to, but meaning not in size, but in quantity. Another taretz, Ilam pitim erubais mamish. Really, it means they were large pieces. So what's the chiddush? I would have thought, when he does not break the mincha at all, it still has a din of a chal, a tayras chal, a status of a loaf. Avalacha, tayras chalais. However, it's broken into large pieces, doesn't have a din of a chala. Loy tayras chalasika, loy tayras psitanika. I would think it's no good. Kamash law, and that's still going to be kosher. So says the Gemara, now that we understand what the first three cases in the Mishnah are, says the Gemara, Lema. Shall we say that the Mishnah is like Rav Shimon the Tani learned in a brayz Rav Shimon? Omer Kol Kayin Sheina Moide B'Avoida, any Kayin who does not accept the Avoida in the Chelek B'Kehuna does not get a Chelek in the Karbanos. Shenemar says the Torah. 1 second, I'm sorry. There we go. Shenemar Hamakriv Esdamash Lom Vezachelev in the Aroin Loitia Shoy Kayemin Limana Moed B'Avoda Yesh Chelek B'Akuna. So we see if he's part of the Avoda, he gets a Chelek. Sheina Moed B'Avoda Ein Lo Chelek B'Avoda Ve'in Li Ela Zu Belvad. I only know this alone. that the kohen has to accept and be involved in the avodas that the pasuk listed. When I am the rabbi says vav avodas, how do we know to include 15 other avodas? What are these 15 avodas? Explains the Gemara. Hayitzika is the pouring in of the oil, ablila is the mixing of apetites, is breaking it up, amlichos the salt, vatinuf is the waving, hagasha is bringing to the mizbeach, vakamitzah is the kamitzah, vaktaris, amalika is the birds, vakabola is catching the blood, vazois sprinkling the blood, vashka saita making the waters of the saita, arivas egla aruf egla taris beser nesis kabayim beimevnei beimachotz minayin. How do we know these 15 avodas the kohen has to accept to do these as well? It says the Torah Mimnei Aaron. Avodah Mesurah Mimnei Aaron. Any avodah that's given up to Mimnei Aaron, called Kohen Sheina Moida by Ein Lo Chelek Peke Una. Now, what was, of course, one of the 15? The first was Ayitzikais, the pouring. So what do we see? We see that the pouring is something that has to be done by the Kohanim, which thereby would lead by extension to our din. And if it's done by a non-Kohen, it should be possible. The problem is, what did we just explain our Mishnah to mean on the bottom of Amud Aleph? That if a non-Kohen does the Yitzika, it's kosher. So says the Gemara, Rav Nachman, four lines on the white lines, no kasha. Kam b'minchas koyanim, kam b'minchas Yisrael. Minchas Yisrael, dabas kemitzi. There's the din of kemitza, mikmitz ve'el mitzvahs kunam. Li made al yitziko, belilo, which teaches about the pouring and the mixing, shekshir bizarre. But minchas koyanim, de labas kemitzi, meikara. There's no kemitza at all. Labas kemitzi, excuse me. Therefore, meikara. Baya kuna requires a koyin. Says the Gemara, Amar le Rava, not so fast, Michti. Minchas Kayanim Eichas Rabbi. Where do we learn out the din of a Minchas Kayanim? Minchas Yitzika, Minchas Yisrael. Masik Seir Sharav, Achanamik Seir Bizarre. So how is the din going to be different? Says the Gemara, another way of learning it, Amar Nachal Lakash, Kan B'Kemitzais, Kan B'Nikmatzais, Kan B'She'ein Nikmatzais. One is when they have a kemitza taken. One is when they do not have a kemitza taken. So says the Gemara, Rava mechti shenik matzos mechas rabbi. The same kasha liyitzika minik matzos. Kinik matzos masuk shever zaval chanamik shever bizarres. How are we going to split up either the minchas ka'an and minchas Yisrael, different types of kemitza? Says the Gemara, Lamachavarta mastisa tloiker of Shimon. It must mean that indeed the Mishnah is not going with the Shita of Rav Shimon as we suggested originally. Says the Gemara, okay, my time of the Rabbanan, well, this will conclude. What is the reason of the Rabbanan that holds that the Shemen could be poured by a non-Kohen? They bring it to Bnei Aaron, HaKoyanim, and Kamatz. Make a mitzvah with his kuna liman al yitziko blilo shekshir bizar. For Rav Shimon, what does he say? Bnei Aaron hakoyanim. What do we say? Mikra nidrash lefanav uli achrav. The pasuk can be darshan both ways. We'll stop over here. We'll pick it up over here as the Gemara is going to continue darshaning Shitas Rav Shimon. How we learn out the different dinim whether it needs kahuna or not. B'siyata dishmaya.